Your ankles are swelling every single afternoon, and you've been blaming the wrong thing for years. You've cut your salt. You've propped your feet up on a pillow every night. You've bought the compression socks. And by 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, your ankles will puff up again anyway, like none of it ever happened. If that's been your experience, I need you to hear something most doctors don't have time to explain in a 15-minute appointment. And most YouTube videos get flat out wrong, because it's easier to sell you a supplement than to tell you the truth. So let's actually get into the truth today. Why your legs really swell, what's actually happening inside your body when it does, and what genuinely helps versus what's just noise. By the end of this, you're going to understand your own body better than most people ever will, and you're going to know exactly which symptoms mean drink more water and move around, and which symptoms mean call your doctor today. Stick with me, because that second part might be the most important thing you learn all year. Let's start with the basics, because almost nobody explains this part clearly. The medical word for swelling is edema, and all it means is that fluid has built up somewhere it isn't supposed to be, specifically in the spaces between your cells, called the interstitial space. Your body is constantly moving fluid around. Blood carries fluid out into your tissues to deliver oxygen and nutrients, and then your veins and your lymphatic system are supposed to carry that fluid back. It's a loop, out and back, thousands of times a day, every day of your life. When that loop works the way it should, you never even think about it. When it doesn't, fluid gets stuck on the outside, and because gravity is relentless, it sinks to the lowest point it can reach. For most of us, sitting or standing through the day, that lowest point is the ankles and the feet. That's also exactly why the swelling is worse by evening and better by morning. Lying flat all night gives gravity a break, and some of that pooled fluid finally gets a chance to drain back where it belongs. Then you get up, gravity goes back to work, and the cycle starts over. So here's the real question. Why does that loop break down in the first place? And this is where almost every video on this topic either oversimplifies or gets it backwards. There isn't one single villain. There are a small number of mechanisms, and depending on your age, your health, and your daily habits, one or more of them is probably running in the background of your life right now. The first mechanism, and by far the most common one in people over 50, is your veins simply getting tired. Inside the veins of your legs are tiny one-way valves, stacked all the way up your leg like a staircase, and their entire job is to stop blood from sliding back down once it's been pushed up toward your heart. Every time you walk, your calf muscles squeeze those veins like a pump, pushing blood upward, and the valves snap shut behind it, so gravity can't pull it back down. That system works beautifully for most of your life. But valves are tissue, and tissue wears with use. After decades of standing, sitting, pregnancies, weight changes, or just the simple passage of time, those valves can start to loosen. When they do, some blood slips backward instead of staying pushed up. Pressure builds inside the vein, and fluid starts seeping out into the surrounding tissue. This condition has a name, the chronic venous insufficiency, and it is genuinely one of the most common causes of ankle and lower leg swelling in adults past 50. It tends to be soft swelling that leaves a dent if you press your finger into it for a few seconds. It's usually both legs, gets worse the longer you're on your feet, and eases up overnight. If that sounds exactly like what you're dealing with, you are far from alone. Studies estimate this affects a striking percentage of people over 50, and it climbs higher every decade after that. The second mechanism is simpler and far more correctable. Plain old stillness. Remember that pump I just described, the one your calf muscles run every time you walk? If you sit at a desk for 8 hours, or sit on a long flight, or stand frozen in one spot for hours at work, that pump barely fires. Blood and fluid have nowhere to go but down and out into the tissue. This is why people notice their ankles swelling after a long drive, after a transatlantic flight, or after a day of standing behind a register or a surgical table. It's not a disease, it's just physics meeting inactivity, and it's often the easiest of all the causes to fix, because moving fixes it. The third mechanism is sodium and water balance. And this is the part that actually has some legitimate science behind it, even if it gets exaggerated online. Sodium sits mostly in your bloodstream and the fluid around your cells, and water follows sodium wherever it goes. That part is true biology, not a myth. When you eat a very salty meal, your body holds on to a bit more water temporarily to keep your blood sodium concentration balanced. And some people feel that the next day as extra puffiness, especially if their veins or kidneys are already working harder than they should. Potassium works against sodium in this balance, helping your body release excess sodium and the water that comes with it. This is real, and it's one of the reasons doctors do genuinely recommend watching your salt intake and making sure you're getting enough potassium from food. But, and this matters, for most people with healthy kidneys and a healthy heart, this mechanism causes mild, manageable puffiness, not the kind of swelling that doesn't go away or that shows up only on one leg. If your swelling is dramatic, one-sided, or simply won't budge no matter what you eat, sodium and potassium are not your main story, and no amount of avocado is going to fix it. The fourth mechanism is the one that should genuinely get your attention, not because it's common, but because it's serious. Swelling in both legs can be one of the earliest visible signs of your heart, kidneys, or liver struggling to keep up. When the heart isn't pumping efficiently, blood backs up in the veins leading to it, pressure rises, and fluid gets pushed out into the legs. This is one of the recognizable early signs of heart failure, and it's frequently accompanied by shortness of breath, especially when lying down, and unusual fatigue. When the kidneys aren't filtering properly, the body holds on to far more sodium and water than it should, and that fluid has to go somewhere, often the legs, sometimes the face and hands. When the liver isn't producing enough of a certain protein that normally keeps fluid inside your blood vessels, fluid leaks out into the tissues too. None of this is meant to alarm you for no reason. Most leg swelling is venous insufficiency or inactivity, not heart failure. But this is exactly why doctors check the heart, kidneys, and liver first when someone comes in with new swelling. And it's exactly why I'm not going to sit here and tell you the answer is one vitamin and you can skip that conversation with your doctor. And then there's the cause almost nobody mentions, even though it's hiding in plain sight for a lot of people. Blood clots. A blood clot deep in the leg vein, called a deep vein thrombosis, causes swelling that is almost always one leg only, often with pain, warmth, and redness in that leg that the other one doesn't have. This is not a wait-and-see situation. This is a call your doctor today, possibly go to urgent care situation. Because a clot like this can break loose and travel to the lungs, which is a medical emergency. I'm telling you this not to scare you, but because I would rather you hear it calmly from me right now than panic about it later without knowing what to look for. One swollen leg especially with pain or warmth, deserves a same-day phone call. Two swollen legs that have been building gradually for weeks or months is a very different, far less urgent picture. So now you understand the real landscape. Veins losing their grip with age, hours of sitting or standing, sodium and water balance, and occasionally something more serious that genuinely needs medical attention rather than a kitchen remedy. With that landscape in mind, let's talk about what actually helps, because the good news is that for the vast majority of people whose swelling comes from the first three causes, there is a lot you can do. Start with movement, because it's the most underrated tool you have. You don't need an intense workout. You need your calf muscles doing their job regularly throughout the day. If you sit for work, stand up and walk for a couple of minutes every half hour or so. Simple ankle circles and calf raises while seated can keep that pump active even when you can't get up. If you're flying or driving for hours, plan for breaks where you walk and flex your ankles up and down repeatedly while seated. This single habit, done consistently, makes a visible difference for an enormous number of people within days, not months. Next, elevation, but done properly. Propping your feet on a low coffee table while you're upright on the couch barely helps, because your legs still aren't above your heart. Real elevation means lying down with your legs raised above heart level for 15 to 20 minutes, a few times a day if you can manage it. Gravity that was working against you all day finally starts working for you, and fluid drains back toward circulation instead of sitting in your ankles. Then there's compression. Properly fitted compression stockings apply gentle, graduated pressure that's tighter at the ankle and looser higher up the leg, which helps push fluid upward against gravity instead of letting it pool. This isn't a gimmick. It's one of the most evidence-backed tools for venous insufficiency specifically, and it's worth getting properly fitted rather than guessing your size online. Now let's talk about sodium and potassium, honestly, because this is where so many videos either ignore the topic completely or wildly overstate it. Cutting back on heavily processed, very salty foods, the canned soups, the deli meats, the fast food, the salty snacks, genuinely helps reduce fluid retention for a meaningful number of people, especially if your diet currently leans heavily on those foods. At the same time, making sure you're getting adequate potassium from real food matters too, because potassium helps your body manage sodium properly. You don't need a fancy supplement stack for this. Leafy greens, beans, potatoes with the skin on, bananas, oranges, and yes, avocados are all genuinely good sources, and getting them consistently throughout your week, not just once in a while, is what actually moves the needle. If you have any kidney condition or take medication that affects potassium, talk to your doctor before deliberately increasing your potassium intake, because in that specific situation, more isn't automatically safer. Hydration deserves a mention too, because it sounds backwards, but it's true. When you don't drink enough water, your body tends to hold on to the water it has more tightly, including in your tissues. Staying steadily hydrated throughout the day, rather than under-drinking and then trying to flush things out later, supports your body's natural fluid balance instead of fighting against it. And here's something practical almost nobody mentions. Your footwear and how you sit matter more than people realize. Tight socks or shoes that cut into your ankle can restrict the very return flow you're trying to support. Crossing your legs for long stretches compresses veins right where you need blood flowing freely. Small habit, real impact. Now here's the part I want you to actually remember, because this is the difference between managing your swelling intelligently and just guessing. If your swelling is in both legs, builds up gradually over the day, gets better overnight, and you can press a dent into it that slowly fills back in, that's the classic pattern of venous insufficiency or simple fluid retention. And the steps I just gave you are exactly the right approach, alongside a conversation with your doctor if it's persistent, just to rule out anything bigger. But if your swelling is in one leg only, especially with pain, warmth, or redness, that needs medical attention now, not home remedies. If it comes with shortness of breath, chest discomfort, or you're suddenly more exhausted than usual climbing stairs you used to climb easily, that needs a doctor's attention soon, because that combination can point toward your heart. And if the swelling appeared suddenly and severely, rather than building gradually, that's also a signal to get it checked, rather than wait it out. I know it's tempting to want one clean answer, one vitamin, one mineral, one simple fix that explains everything and solves everything. But your body is more honest than that, and so am I. The real answer is that your legs are a feedback system, telling you something true about your veins, your activity level, your sodium balance, or occasionally your heart and kidneys. Learning to read that feedback instead of just silencing it with a pillow under your ankles is what actually changes things long term. So here's where that leaves you. Move more throughout the day, even in small bursts. Elevate properly, not just symbolically. Consider real compression if venous insufficiency fits your pattern. Ease up on heavily processed salty foods and lean into real potassium-rich foods consistently. Stay hydrated instead of restricting water out of fear. And pay attention to the difference between this is gradual and both-sided versus this is sudden, one-sided, or paired with other symptoms. Because that distinction is the single most useful thing you can take away from everything I just told you. Your ankles have been trying to tell you something for a while now. Today, you finally understand the language they're speaking in.